Yeah, that said, this is our safe harbor statement. At the end, I could talk on something that could come in the next future related to our products, but obviously the important thing is that there's no commitment on what I'm going to share with you and to say to you today related to the future of Oracle products. So let's start with a quick introduction of our targets, or targets we have for Oracle Linux. And Oracle Linux for us is not only the operating system, it's really an ecosystem that also includes the virtualization. So we are today working on 4 main directions. We have at the first place, maybe, and this one is the most important one, the cloud. And when I say the cloud, with cloud, we mean both the Oracle Public Cloud that today is called Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, as well as private cloud solutions. So even the only software solution that allows to create your own private cloud. We are working obviously on containers and virtualization. Containers and virtualization are at the end the foundation or the technology where you can really build the cloud solution. Linux kernel, as you maybe already know, on Oracle Linux, we have our own kernel named Unbreakable Enterprise kernel, and it's where we address all the requirements related to that we have, for example, for the Oracle workload, or all the requirements that we have as a cloud vendor or as an energy system vendor. And then the security, last but not least, the security. Security is maybe today one of the most important topics that have to be evaluated while implementing or creating architectures cloud dedicated. And over there, obviously, we have KSplice. KSplice is a zero downtime security update solution. So a solution able to install security fixes on your Oracle Linux system without any kind of downtime. So without restarting the server or without restarting the services that are running on top of your server. Moving ahead, and let's now introduce the Oracle Linux KVM virtualization solution. At the end, as you can imagine, as on any virtualization solution, we have a compute and a management layer. The compute layer is today based on Oracle Linux 7 with the Unbreakable Enterprise kernel. And this is today the foundation of the compute side of Oracle Linux KVM server. The important thing to know is that into our compute solution, we also have advanced QEMU and libvirt releases. So we have a team that today is dedicated to work on those user space components that are involved or leveraged by the KVM hypervisor. And I can say that we have quite updated releases of those components, and we have an engineering team that is going also to and working day by day to get those 2 components reliable for production system. So even if we have updated releases of those components, those are also reliable, because we have I also want to remind that what you can see here, so the Oracle Linux 7, the UEK, and those advanced QEMU and libvirt releases are also what today we leverage for many different components or many different options at Oracle. So it's not only the Oracle Linux KVM that you can install on a commodity hardware, it's also the same KVM that, for example, runs on the Oracle Exadata X8M, X82M, so the Exadata system that had been announced in September 2019 at the Oracle Open World. For the management side, more than a couple of years ago, we did an important change within Oracle. We decided to start to work and collaborate on an open source project instead of building our own management solution, like, for example, we have done in the past. And so we started to work on Overt. Overt is the open source project where today we base our Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. The important thing is obviously that Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager is developed, tested, and supported by Oracle, right? So while we work on the open source project, we also have developers, QA and QE teams, and support dedicated to Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. And the cool point related to the entire Oracle Linux KVM virtualization solution is that today, this kind of option is offered as an additional program for the Oracle Linux Premier support. So there's no hidden cost, there's no virtualization support subscription required. If you get the Oracle Linux Premier support, you are also covered for the entire Oracle Linux KVM virtualization solution. Moving ahead, and let's see now, or let's get a quick overview of how an Oracle Linux KVM architecture can be built. At the end, we have the Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager that is our management interface for KVM hypervisor. We can have different Oracle Linux KVM compute nodes, and we start from the Oracle Linux 7 Update 7 release, arriving to also the Oracle Linux 7 Update 9 release for the KVM host. And top of Oracle Linux KVM, you have the option to run different Linux distributions. So obviously Oracle Linux, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, CentOS. We also have SUSE Enterprise Linux there, and Ubuntu. And if you want an important thing to evaluate related to the Linux as well as the Windows, so you also obviously have the opportunity to run Microsoft Windows on top of Oracle Linux KVM, is that all of those platforms or all of those operating systems that today are supported for Oracle Linux KVM we're running on-premise are the same operating systems that we also support on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So if you are going to possibly evaluate an hybrid cloud solution for the next future of your company, the important thing to know is that Oracle Linux KVM is also what we run as a cloud vendor. And today you have the opportunity to run the same set of operating systems on-premise as well as on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. One important thing I would like to mention related to Microsoft Windows, while running Microsoft Windows on Oracle Linux KVM, we also supply the Oracle Virtual drivers for Microsoft Windows. So those drivers are built by Oracle and have been also certified by Microsoft. This kind of thing means that Microsoft Windows running on top of Oracle Linux KVM is also supported by Microsoft itself. So now, a quick overview related to the management solution. As already said, Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager is based on Overt, and the important thing to know is that we didn't fork from the open source project. So it means that everything that, for example, in the past had been built for Overt, like automation, Ansible scripts, Terraform, or something relying on Terraform provider for Overt, or anything relying on API that Overt exposes, can perfectly run also with Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. So we didn't fork, we are 100% compatible with the open source project. And the only difference, if you want, is that the Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager is integrated, tested, and supported by Oracle. Today, Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager is public available on yam.oracle.com, so you can install it, you can update the same. It's public available, and you are not required to any subscription to get access to the code or to get access to the software. And we also have a dedicated Oracle documentation library to Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. So we have different books, one dedicated to the architecture and planning guide, the getting started, release notes, and also an administration guide dedicated to Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. Key virtualization features that today are there on Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. Obviously, I'm not going to mention all of them, but as you can imagine, from the same web interface, you can manage storage, networking, compute. You have the high availability as well as line migration, option to manage virtual appliances, or let's call them also templates. And that said, we also introduced the support for other advanced features. One thing that we also evaluated. So let me give you a quick introduction related to this. Overt, so the open source project, is really very, very rich of features. So at the end, by Overt today, you can really manage all or quite all the possible options or the possible features that KVM hypervisor is able to do or to get implemented. What we are doing on Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager is to work on all of those features and possibly introduce the support when we think that those are production ready or those are reliable for a production system. So actually, we introduced those features, those advanced features with the latest release of Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. Our plan in the next future is to continue to test the new functionalities or test further functionalities to get the same supported on Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. That said, we didn't strip away any kind of feature. So all the features that today are there on Overt are also available on Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. The only difference is that we have a set of features that today are supported on Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager, and others that maybe today could be less important that are available as a technology preview. So our customers can decide to leverage them, but there is no official support of Oracle, maybe because we are still testing those, and the production support will be introduced later. Between those features, we have two main features that our OVM customers were looking for on Oracle VM Server, and the first one is related to the snapshot. So we now have the snapshot capability for running VMs on Oracle Linux KVM, and the web interface allows you to take snapshot as well as to go back and so reverse a virtual machine to a specific snapshot that had been taken in the past. We now have the role-based access control, so you can decide that you have different roles on Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager, and you can have a role dedicated to the storage management, a role that maybe can act only as a cloud user or a cloud consumer. So you can have many different roles. You can decide who does what on Oracle Linux KVM at the end. We introduced the support for the self-hosted engine. The self-hosted engine is the option to run the management machine as a VM on top of the cluster that it manages. So you are not required anymore to have an external system or an external VM where to run the management solution. The management solution can run as a VM on the cluster that it manages. We also support Gluster. So Gluster is an option that we introduced years ago. It's a supported option for Oracle Linux that we introduced years ago, starting with Gluster release 3.12. We are today on Gluster 6, and the same is also supported with Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. So Gluster can be also managed by the same web interface of Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. Last but not least, we also introduced the support for the Virt V2B tool. Virt V2B tool is another open source component, another open source tool dedicated to migrations. So it gives you the option to possibly automate the migration from another hypervisor to Oracle Linux KVM. Yeah, so the self-hosted engine, as I was saying before, at the end is the option to run your Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager as a virtual machine on the host managed by that engine. It's a cool option. It's also strongly suggested for any kind of architecture that is going to be dedicated to Oracle Linux KVM, because getting Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager running as a VM on the cluster, on the KVM cluster you manage, will give you also the availability for your management solution. So while this VM runs on the cluster, if you're going to see or you have any kind of issue on the host that is guesting the Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager VM, automatically the VM will be migrated or will be restarted on another compute node or on another Oracle Linux KVM node. And so you will also get the availability for this kind of appliance. While installing the self-hosted engine, you have two main different options. You have the hosted manager, that at the end it's an architecture where you get the engine running on as a VM on top of the cluster. but relying on standard storage solution that could be NFS, iSCSI, or Fiber Channel, or you can have an hyperconverged installation. Hyperconverged means that the KVM nodes, the Oracle Linux KVM nodes, also act as storage nodes, because over there you have a cluster, right? So the hyperconverged include the compute, include the storage, include the management, everything running on your Oracle Linux KVM cluster. Another important concept is related to the fact that Oracle Linux KVM today is also available on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So you can run the same kind of solution also on the Oracle Cloud. And again, this kind of thing is quite important, because while seeing or while watching to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, you have two main different options there. You can leverage the VM shapes available on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or you can also evaluate to run your own hypervisor on the Oracle Cloud. On this kind of option, you have the opportunity to run the same KVM hypervisor that you maybe are also running on premise. What does it mean? It means that while approaching the moving to the cloud, or while approaching the hybrid cloud, you will be sure to have the same kind of hypervisor, and the same hypervisor available on premise as well as on the Oracle Cloud. And so the possible moving of VMs of services from on-prem to the cloud, as well from the cloud to on-prem, will be lightweight, just because any surprise is expected. You are going to have the same kind of software solution on both architectures. Another thing that we did at Oracle, and this one is really dedicated to Oracle products. We obviously introduced templates. Those templates are today available for Oracle Linux 7 Update 9 and Oracle Linux 8 Update 2. Those kind of templates allows to possibly automate the deployment of virtual machines running on top of Oracle Linux KVM. So starting from those templates, you have the opportunity to define the configuration of your VMs on the first boot, and between the option you have obviously the networking options like the host name or the IP address, DNS server. At the same time, you also have the opportunity to define the authentication will be there for this kind of VM. But the most interesting option is related to the custom script. So on the first boot of the Oracle Linux VM, you also have the opportunity to execute your own scripts, your own commands on the machine. And obviously, those custom scripts can really do whatever you want. You can, for example, automate the deployment or the installation of an Oracle software. You can automate the deployment or installation of any third-party software, right? So with the option to execute a custom script at the end of the first boot of your VM, you can really do whatever you want, right? One thing that we are also working on related to those templates, as you can imagine, we are now working with our engineering teams to get the Oracle database template built for Oracle Linux KVM. And later you will hear about this. The other important thing to know is that Cloud Init is today the de facto standard related to the automation or related to the deployment of VMs or services. And Cloud Init is also what we leverage on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure for the deployment of VMs or bare metal systems. So again, while approaching, if someone is going to approach the cloud, same experience available on-prem as well as on the cloud. So a quick resume of the value that we have on Oracle Linux Virtualization, just because at the end, as you know, KVM is an hypervisor part of the Linux kernel, and today on the market there are so many Linux distributions coming from many different vendors, and so at the end, it's important to see a value there, right? Just because KVM is hypothetically available on any Linux distribution. So first of all, the Oracle software certification. today the KVM hypervisor or the Oracle Linux KVM hypervisor is where we certify all the Oracle products. All our development teams are today leveraging Oracle Linux KVM in some way. Could be an instance running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, could be an internal system. All of them are today leveraging Oracle Linux KVM. The Oracle hard partitioning. Oracle hard partitioning is the opportunity to possibly limit the licensing of Oracle products while running on VMs. And this kind of option is today available on Oracle VM Server, like it was in the past, and it's continuing to be available there, as well as on Oracle Linux KVM. Ksplice support, as already said, so the opportunity to install security fixes without any kind of downtime. Ksplice is today available for the hypervisor from the kernel, as well as for the most important user space packages that could be, for example, OpenSSL, glibc, as well as the same QEMU that is also leveraged by the KVM hypervisor. The rapid application deployment with templates and virtual appliances that I already mentioned. The opportunity to get the Oracle Enterprise Manager integration, and so get a single pane of class management where, again, you can manage from the hypervisor arriving to the services running on top of your virtual machines. And the fact that we are still, or we are supplying a product that is 100% compatible with Overt, so with the open source solution, and that a solution that include different backup and restore options, different disaster recovery options coming from the community or coming even from partners, right? So, and this kind of thing is an important one, because we are not asking you to leverage a product that is Oracle only or is a closed source. It's a product where you can find many different examples available from the community, just because maybe all of them had been built with Overt, and so the same kind of solution can be also leveraged with Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. Virt-v2v is another utility where we introduced the support from Oracle, and this kind of utility allows to automate the direct migration from Oracle VM or from VMware, for example. We already have some customers that completed their migration from VMware or from Oracle VM to Oracle Linux KVM. You can find also articles and dedicated to the step-by-step migration. It allows you to automate the migration from Oracle VM or from VMware to Oracle Linux KVM. Feel free to reach out to myself on socials if you are not able to find those articles. I'll be glad to share the links to those articles. The cool point of these utilities is that it really does a direct migration. So while executing the migration, you're going to get a direct copy of your VMs from the source hypervisor to the target one. So you do not have anymore a double step like export to OVA, for example, to then move the OVA on the target and then import the OVA. Here, you are really seeing a direct copy of virtual disks from the source hypervisor to the target one. So it's also a faster solution if you want, while adopting the migration. Another cool point related to Virt-v2v is that it's also able to get all the possible drivers required to properly boot on Oracle Linux KVM installed on your VM during the migration. So as you can imagine, while moving from one hypervisor to another one, the block storage or the network access can be different. So devices that are presented to the operating system are different. Virt-v2v is also able to get the required drivers installed on the booting kernel for your VM. Yeah, quick mention related to where we are today in terms of releases and also the roadmap. Today, Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager 4.3 is the latest release available. We already introduced a couple of erratas for this release, where we addressed some bugs that we identified on the 4.3 release. We and obviously we are also working for the next future. So our target is to work and possibly introduce newer releases of Autocl Linux Virtualization Manager in the next future. Moving ahead, again, a quick reminder related to the support of this solution. With the Autocl Linux Premier support, there's no hidden cost, right? So everything that is today available around the Autocl Linux ecosystem, so containers, Docker, high availability, Kubernetes, cloud native tools, the same Autocl Linux Virtualization Manager and KVM, all of them are part of one unique support subscription, the Autocl Linux Premier one. Moving ahead, another quick reminder related to the support behind Oracle or behind the product. We also have a support team dedicated to Linux and virtualization solution, and all of them are very knowledgeable about the Linux and virtualization solution we propose to our customers. Now, I'm going to check questions that you already shared on the chat. That said, I'm also going to give you a quick overview of the product. Let me see. No questions. Yeah, it seems that we had some issues on the audio. Okay, so let's move to a very quick overview of the solution. Let's share desktop one because it will be much easier. I'm going to connect now on a Autocl Linux Virtualization Manager instance that is running on the Oracle Cloud. So yeah, this one. Okay, so this is the dashboard. On the first login, you can immediately evaluate the status of your KVM cluster or KVM clusters. If you have more of them managed by one unique interface, and you have immediately there, you can immediately see the events or the possible operation that has been executed, the status for your VM, storage, host, and also the resource utilization like CPU, memory, and storage. Now, the cool option related to the management interface of Autocl Linux Virtualization Manager is that you can really manage everything from here. So you're not really required to execute custom scripts or custom commands. And the other interesting point is that everything you can do here from the web interface can also be done by leveraging the Web Services API. So if you are interested on automation, all the options are available. There are also different SDK, so software development kit that are public available for over 10 KB, also leveraged with Autocl Linux Virtualization Manager. Now, one thing that I would like to share with you, so those are VMs, the VMs running on my KVM systems. And the cool point here is related to the networking. On the networking, you can have the default networking on virtualization solutions like KVM or Oracle VM are based on bridges. What does it mean? It means that at the end, starting from a physical NIC, the operating system or the hypervisor create a bridge for each virtual NIC that is going to be leveraged by your VM, right? The other options available on KVM are the pass-through option. Pass-through means that you can get a physical NIC, and the physical NIC will be directly managed, directly leveraged by your virtual machine. And here we have an example on the Oracle Cloud. So if I go and check the VM networks, I can see I can get as an example the VM001, VNIC01. If I check this kind of NIC or this kind of logical network, you can see we have a VLAN tag enabled, and this kind of logical network is dedicated to VMs, right? The other cool option is related to the profile. If I check the profile for my VNIC, I will see that this one is a pass-through, right? What does it mean? It means that this logical network is going to leverage a physical NIC. And this kind of thing can be also evaluated on the host. If I go on the OL KVM01 host, on the network interface, I have the option to manage the networking. And as you can see, let's see VM01, where is it? Here. So this physical device, EMP70S10, is directly leveraged by this logical network, right? So this is the correlation between the two, and it means that the logical network is directly leveraging by pass-through the physical device on my KVM host. And if I check the virtual machine configuration, it was the VM01, we said, on the network interfaces. Over there, I will see that I'm leveraging VM01, VNIC01, right? And the type is a PCI pass-through. So I have also the opportunity to define different network types. I have the opportunity to leverage the PCI pass-through. I have the opportunity to also leverage the port mirroring. So I want a virtual NIC with the same MAC address of the physical one. So the virtual one will mirror the physical one. I can leverage the PCI pass-through. I can also leverage the bridge as the default option for the networking. Other very cool features are related to the options that you have on VMs. You have a huge list of options while configuring your VM. So starting from the CPU, I can define the number of sockets, the number of cores, and the number of threads. I have the option to define the BIOS type. That can be the default one, can be UEFI, can be also secure boot. I obviously have the high availability configuration. The initial run is the tab dedicated to the templates. So I can, as you can see, we mentioned before the templates. So I can decide the first boot configuration starting from a template. On the host, I have the option to define where the VM has to start first. The migration option, I have the opportunity to enable the pass-through also for the whole CPU. So at the end, if you know that something is doable on KVM hypervisor, the same kind of thing should be also manageable from here. This is the very, very interesting thing. And again, this one is running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. So if we can check, for example, this server, as you can see, it's an Oracle server X7-2L. So we should also have NVMe storage here. Let's see. Yeah, maybe too many devices. By the way, it's an L, so we have a local storage here. We have a local NVMe storage available. Yeah, now another thing I want to also share, because we talked about role-based access, right? Let's see now here. This one is the default list of roles that are available on Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager, as you can see, and you also have the opportunity to create new roles. And by those, you can really decide who does what on your KVM architecture. We talked about the cloud user or the cloud consumer. We introduced the concept of cloud consumer, and so a private cloud solution has to supply the opportunity or the option to get a cloud to have a cloud consumer. So a user that connect to an interface, and based on the amount of resources that had been dedicated to that user, the user can create VMs, stop VMs, start VMs, clone VMs, or delete its own VMs. Now, on Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager, we also have a VM portal. On the login page, you have two different types of portals, the administration one and the VM one. I'm going obviously now to log in with, again, with administrator user, because it's the only one that I have on this installation. Now here, as you can see, I have a totally different web interface. So I'm a user, I'm a cloud consumer, and based on the amount of resources, so CPU, memory, and storage that have been, so the quota that had been associated to my user, I can work here and I can create VMs, stop VMs, clone them. So here I have the only management of my VMs, right? I can add another network interface, I can add another disk, I can create a snapshot for my VM, but that's all. I do not have the full administration of host, network, storage, physical devices, and so on. I can only manage my own VMs. And obviously, I also have the opportunity to open the console for my VMs, right? So yeah, for example, I can create a virtual machine, right? Or I can shut down an existing one. And this one is the cloud user, so the cloud consumer web interface. Everything that I showed here is running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Now, I want also to share with you the same kind of installation running on-prem. Now, you should be able to see okay, this one is running within the Oracle network. It's my development environment. Okay, same interface, nothing changes. Yeah, maybe here I have much more VMs than what we have seen on Oracle Cloud. But again, it's the same web interface, it's the same thing, there is no difference. And the cool option or the cool point is that I can also decide to have an Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager installation. So let's do an example. I created and configured my KVM cluster on-prem into my own data center for the company. I want to add a new server, but I do not want to buy a new server because maybe that new server, I require that new server for 1 month of testing, 1 month of development. With the Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager running on-prem, I can manage an Oracle Linux KVM server running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, right? So this is the cool option. I can have my architecture available on-prem and some servers, some KVM servers running on Oracle Cloud, and all of them managed by the same Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager, or vice versa. I can deploy Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and have my own architecture there, but manage some servers, some Oracle Linux KVM servers that are there on premise. And at that point, I can also set up many different things, many different options, like for example, the option to get a VM cloned, moved from a storage repository that is there on premise, moved to a storage repository that is there on the cloud, and so maybe get the VM cloned on the cloud because on the cloud is required for development or testing purposes. Yeah, here I'm going to share with you how a standard networking is. So this is the coming back on profiles, on network profiles or logical networks. This one is the standard logical network. As you can see, it's dedicated to VM. I do not have any VLAN tagging here. If I go on the profile, I will see that my VM public is just created. There's no pass-through, there's no power mirroring. It's just a bridge, right? And if I go on the host, not here, but by selecting the host and check the network interfaces, I only have one physical NIC here. And as you can see, all the networks are associated here, right, on the same physical NIC. And this one is related to the networking. Another thing related to the storage, we mentioned the cluster. Here is where I can create the cluster volumes and get entirely manage the cluster from Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. Another cool option that we also support for cluster is related to the geo-replication. So Gluster gives you also the opportunity to have an asynchronous replication running in the background for your storage. So again, another possible use case. I have my own Oracle Linux KVM cluster running on-prem, and where I'm also leveraging Gluster for the storage. With the geo-replication, I have the opportunity to have a geo-replication of the storage and asynchronous geo-replication of the storage available on Oracle Cloud. And that one could be one of the options for disaster recovery purposes. So the fact that the same solution can easily run on-prem as well as on the Oracle Cloud gives you also the opportunity to really leverage the options that an hybrid cloud solution can give you. Yeah, that said, I think that I covered most of the topics. Yeah, another maybe important one, because when you're going to approach a private cloud solution, you're also interested to the quality of services that you are going to supply on top of your private cloud solution. You have a quality of service management from the same web interface. The quality of service is there for the storage, for the VM networking, for the host networking, as well as for the CPU. So you can decide to create different profiles, like for example, dev, test, and production, where dev and test could be limited to a specific value for bandwidth or latency on the networking, or a specific value for the IO operation per second on the storage, and the production one unlimited, or the production one leveraging 90% of the capabilities that your cluster can grant to services running on top. Yeah, so again, it's a full of feature solution. It's where we today are working a lot. We already saw a huge list of customers today leveraging this kind of solution on-prem. Some of them started from scratch. Some of them decided to migrate from Oracle VM to Oracle Linux KVM. Some of them migrated. So we are working with customers that decided to migrate from VMware, and customers that already completed their migration from VMware to Oracle Linux KVM and Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. Yeah, that said, I think that I covered most of the important topics related to Oracle Linux KVM and Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. Yeah, we have one question, and it's related to the hard partitioning licensing. Regarding Oracle hard partitioning licensing, same rules applies as with Oracle VM? Yeah, absolutely, yes. If you Google for Oracle Linux KVM hard partitioning, you can find a paper with all the details on how to implement, how to get the Oracle hard partitioning policy in place. By the way, in terms of options that give you, there's no difference. It's the same concept that was there and is still there on Oracle VM, right? So you have to pin the virtual CPU of your VM to the physical CPU available on the host by leveraging the proper utility that is available. And at that point, you are compliant with the Oracle hard partitioning policies. Yeah, so there's no difference between policies that were there for Oracle VM and policy for Oracle Linux KVM. I cannot see any other question. So feel free to reach out to myself. I'm there on LinkedIn, on Twitter. If you have any question, feel free to reach out. I'll be glad to answer or possibly give you my feedback. And that said, I also would like to thank Qualogy Holding for the opportunity that they gave to me to talk on Oracle Linux KVM and Oracle Linux Virtualization Manager. We really appreciated this kind of option. So thanks again, Qualogy. And yeah, have a nice day. Thank you and bye.